Hello, Stitch People. Welcome to the Stitch People podcast. I'm Lizzie Bean, your host and the founder of Stitch People, where our goal with cross-stitching is to inspire your personal creativity, and our goal with this podcast is to help you make some new friends while you're at it. Today's episode is a very special episode. We have Erika Cota, who is one of our first 3 Stitch People ambassadors, first ever, and she has been super great to jump in, be an ambassador for us, kind of without even knowing what that means, without knowing what we even know what it means, and helping us figure out what it means and working together to be a positive voice, an inspiration, and a leader in the Stitch People community. So I've been getting to know her a little bit over the last few months, but it was especially fun because of that to sit down with her and chat for an hour with my Stitch People podcast lens on and asking questions that I think you all might be interested to know too. So gather your favorite snack, your favorite beverage, and your latest work in progress cross-stitch project and listen to this great conversation with Erika. I hope you enjoy it. You're going to love getting to know her. Erika, it is so good to see you. Thank you so much for being willing to chat with me today. Tell us all about where you are. It's early morning for you, if I'm not mistaken, even though it's evening for me.
Yes, I'm coming in from Japan. It's actually Friday morning, so I'm in the future.
Amazing.
Right
Do we have
now.
anything we need to be worried about in the future?
Well, it's actually snowing here, which it hasn't all winter. So this is our first snow, kind of exciting.
Is snow common in Japan?
Yes and no. It's kind of like Virginia weather where it may snow, it may not. It will get a couple inches, but nothing too crazy.
Okay. It's not like a snowy wonderland kind of place. So.
No, nothing like New York or some places where it gets feet of snow.
Right. How long have you been in Japan?
We just moved here in August, but we were stationed here before for 3 years. We were here from 2014 to 2017. So now we're back
So you're
again.
back. And are you back in the same place?
We are. We were actually stationed at this base before. So we're back here again. I said if I ever came back, I wanted to come to the exact same location. We know it. It would be neat to get back here. And my son, Oscar, was actually born here. So it's neat to bring him back to where he was born.
Yeah. How old is he now?
He's 6. He's in first grade.
Okay. Yeah, that was like quick math. I know you said when you got there, but I was like, what year would that have been? Yeah, 6. Okay. So now he can kind of explore like his origins, kind of where he, where he came into the world. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and taking him on some of the some of the adventures that we've been on before. When he was a baby, we went to a place, it's a squirrel garden, which is kind of interesting, where you can go see squirrels and feed them. They'll crawl up on you, which is kind of funny if you think in America, squirrels may be in your backyard. But in Japan, there's a place to visit them. So I took him when he was a baby. And at school this year, they actually had a field trip to go back there. So we went with his class. So it was neat to see he went there when he was a baby and now at school. Yeah.
Are you anywhere near where you can like feed and interact with a deer in Japan?
That's a little bit farther away.
Oh, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, I want to say that's Nagano.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've done that in the past. It's quite a drive out there, but yeah, they come right up to you as well, and
that blew my mind.
Go at your pockets.
Yeah, because they expect the food. I went with the BYU Wind Symphony. I was in the classical band, and we did a tour of South Korea and Japan, and we went there, and my animal-loving mind was like absolutely blown away. I was like, oh my gosh. And deer, they make this cute little bleeding sound. So I think it's on par that they would also have a squirrel park. That's pretty cool. I think the closest thing in the States, I hiked the Grand Canyon with my dad after my senior year of high school. And when we went rim to rim, there's these big steel boxes for you to put your food in at the base of the Grand Canyon, because like when you're in the canyon, because the squirrels get fed and they'll get into your food and they come right onto your lap. Funny. They like crawl on you. They're very friendly.
Yeah.
So not an official squirrel park, but a park with friendly squirrels for those who want to experience it. How cool.
There's also a place north of here that has snow monkeys, they're called, and they'll come right up to you. You can't have food out and about because they'll try to take it. You walk in the woods kind of on a snowy path to get to them because they're in a hot spring, kind of taking a bath in the middle of the snow in the forest. And so I went on that tour before, and you can see them all in there in the hot spring taking a bath. It's quite fun.
That is amazing and super smart. Good. I mean, they figured it out. If there's a place to hang out, it's the hot spring.
I
How
know.
fun.
Yeah.
So Oscar is not your only little one, correct?
No, we have a daughter, Olive. She's 2.5.
Oh, a teeny baby.
Yeah.
Little toddler. Is she, let's see, what is twos? Terrible twos? Does that describe
yeah, she is a little crazy. Sometimes it's hard to even go to the grocery store because she just wants to run around, but it's fun. Hopefully we can get out and explore with her when she gets a little bit older.
Awesome. And how long are you planning to stay? Is it kind of pre-prescribed? Do you know when it is you'll be heading back?
Yeah, we're here for 3 years. So we don't know an exact date, but 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's so exciting. And do you know where you will go back to?
My husband has been in the Navy for 16 and a half years. So he's getting close to retirement. So we're not sure. Probably Virginia. We do like the East Coast. Cool. We'll probably go back there, but we'll see when it gets closer.
And now I have to say, I mean, I got a little carried away because I know you're in Japan and that's super fun. And we just did the Stitch People Stitch Along. Week 2 was your pattern with the mountain and the sun and Japan, and that's all you. So I wanted to jump right into that. But I do have the benefit of being a little bit better acquainted with you already because you are one of our Stitch People ambassadors.
Yay.
So I have the pre-existing knowledge that you are from upstate New York. But tell us a little bit more about kind of where you're from here in the States, and you and your husband and your family of origin.
Yeah. When people ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from New York. A lot of people go to the city, but I'm not quite from the city. It's actually a little farm town an hour north of Albany. So we're upstate New York.
Yeah.
And
upstate
both
Eastern, right?
Yeah, upstate, straight across a little east towards Vermont, I would say. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. And is that where your husband's from as well?
His family is mainly from Connecticut, I would say. Okay. But they did live in the same town as me growing up. And I worked at a pizza place when I was young. So did my husband, and actually a lot of our family members. And that's how my husband and I met, as we worked at the same pizza place when we were younger.
As teenagers. Yeah. So you've known each other a really long time.
Yes, we've known each other since I was 16, and I got married at 20. So we've been together quite a while.
I love it. It was fate, meant to be together. Do you still like pizza?
We do. And actually, every time we go back to our hometown, we make sure we go to that pizza place. We still talk to the owners, and they know us, and we have our favorite meals from
owners?
Yes. Some of the parents of the owners have sadly passed on. Okay. But some of them are still there, and they know us, and we go in and talk to them. It's very fun.
Oh, I love it. Pizza brought you together.
Yeah, kind of funny, but cute.
You know, if there's a food that can bring people together, it's pizza, I think.
True.
It's pretty great. So you found your love at 16, you got married at 20, and now you have 2 kids and you're traveling the world together.
Yeah.
That's pretty romantic. Have you lived any other places abroad?
No, Japan is the only place we've lived. When I was in high school, I did take a 2-week trip to France with my French class, and we stayed there. But other than that, I haven't really been abroad much. Yeah.
Well, I think living in Japan, I mean, that's a pretty hefty deposit in the World Travel Bank. It's a totally different experience living somewhere than just visiting. What would you say is maybe, I don't know, the most interesting or unexpected or cool or unusually difficult? Like, what stands out to you living somewhere else? You know, a different country.
I would say I'm sure each country has different quirks and different things that we would see as different from the United States. One thing for sure is driving over here, we drive on the left side. The steering wheel is on the right side of the car. So it's a little backwards. You have to get used to it. The turn signal is opposite. So when you first start to drive, sometimes you're turning on the windshield wipers thinking it's the turn signal because it's all backwards.
Right.
But,
it's flip-flopped. Like in the
yeah.
UK? I wonder which countries. I'd love to
Maybe,
see
I
a
don't
breakdown
know.
of like which countries are left side and which countries are right side and which is more common. We should just agree,
Right.
like, let's get United States on the metric system and let's get everybody on the driving on the right system. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Just standardize. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so you drive around. Is there a lot of public transportation where you are, or is it pretty much driving where you need to go there?
There's a lot of trains and bus systems nearby, which make it
Nice.
super easy because the roads are kind of small and it is a very populated area, especially in the city in Tokyo. So a lot of places it's easier to take the train, but we do have cars that we can drive if we want to as well.
Nice. Very cool. What does school look like for your kiddos there? Well, I guess the kiddo who's in school.
Yeah, it's right on base and it's an American school.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah,
That
it's
makes
part of the
sense.
DoD education system, and it's right next door. He walks behind our tower to school, and it's super easy and convenient.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
not a
cool.
lot different than in the States.
Emma's podcast episode, she worked for the British equivalent. She was a teacher on bases around. So now we have the teacher and the parents of kids being taught. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
On the bases. That's fun. So tell us a little bit more about you. Are you a full-time mom? Do you work? Do you sell portraits? How do you spend your time and what do you do day in and day out?
Yeah.
A day in the life of Erika.
Well, my official title is a stay-at-home mom. My husband gets deployed a lot. While we're in Japan, he gets deployed every single year for multiple months at a time. So I'm a solo parent a lot of the time. So I stay home with the kids. But I do keep myself quite busy. I take advantage of some hourly care for my youngest sometimes to just get my own time, cross stitch, go to the grocery store in peace, those sorts of things. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, and it's one of those things too that I never will ever scoff at the beyond full-time job that is stay-at-home mom. I have so much respect for it because I could barely keep life running in the background with like work stuff. It just, oh man, it's a lot to manage, especially I can't imagine. I mean, I don't have kids, but all my friends do, my sister does. And it's just so much. It's constant.
It is.
So that's really cool. You get to hold down the fort while your hubby's away. Man,
yes.
That must be hard. Does it get lonely? Is it hard?
It is hard, especially being stationed overseas. Family isn't close. They're thousands of miles away. So we don't have that village. I don't have somebody to watch the kids when I have doctor's appointments and stuff like that. So we're pretty much relying on ourselves. I do have a couple of friends here, one that was stationed here before. And that's kind of nice to have her here. But it's still hard. It's not the same as being in the States, but
it's a little more, just logistically difficult. Like
it's different. Yeah.
Help isn't built in. Like if you were around family.
My brother just had a baby in the fall and he has my parents there to watch his new baby so he can have some time or go where he needs to go. And not having that is kind of difficult. But we also got to think we have this opportunity while we're here in Japan. A lot of people don't have. We have all these places to explore. So we're trying to take advantage of it while we're here. Yeah.
Cool. Is it something where you plan to really travel within and around Japan, or is it easy to get other places from there? And what would that be? Like, I know my sister lived in the UK for a while, and it's so much easier to like take the channel into France or take a quick flight over to Ireland, like because you're already over in Europe. It was easier for her to like grab a quick weekend or two somewhere interesting. So, or different,
Yeah.
not, I mean, it's all interesting. So for you, as you're thinking of the next few years there, what does exploring look like? Are you going to go all over Japan? Are you going to go out from there?
I would like to explore as much as I can. While we were here, when we were stationed before, I explored all over Japan. I flew to Korea. My husband and I went to South
Cool.
Korea and had a little vacation there, which was amazing. We loved it there. He had a port visit in Guam, and I visited
Oh,
him in Guam.
okay.
So,
Where
yeah,
even
so
is
those are kind
Guam?
of the
Is that Southeast
um,
Asia? Is that
yes,
like
I believe so. I'm not that good at geography, but
Indonesia area, right? Like,
I think so.
Thailand, Vietnam, Guam, kind of all in there, I think
Yeah, they're
is.
all pretty close, so it was
Yeah.
easy to take a flight right there. We did all
Cool.
that last time because it was just me. I didn't have the children.
Yeah.
Now with the 2.5-year-old, it is a little difficult to travel
Yeah.
and explore, but I'm hoping as she gets a little bit older, she'll be able to take those train rides and go
Yeah.
places and see the sights because we want to do that.
Especially,
It's fun.
I mean, by the time you guys are getting ready to leave, she'll be 5.
Yeah.
So she'll
Yep.
be almost as old as your oldest.
Right.
So
So
it'll be
I'm hoping
easier.
maybe like 3.5 or so, maybe the next
Yeah.
year, she kind of gets a little easier to take
Nice.
out and about. Yeah, that
Oh, that's
toddler
exciting.
stage is a little difficult right now,
Yeah, especially in
for
an
sure.
unfamiliar place in a whole other
Right?
country. If she's a runner, like every 2.5-year-old likes to be,
Yes.
just pew, like that's not what you want.
Right. Yeah,
Not,
yeah.
yeah, not abroad. So tell us about your crafty life. You mentioned, you know, getting some time to yourself to stitch. Tell us about cross stitching. How long have you been cross stitching? What does that look like? Again, I'm kind of plugged into what you do myself, but I so admire your craftiness generally. Like it seems like you're always tackling. I think you just posted like fabric postcards. It's like paint by number, but with fabric. Like you're just
Yeah.
doing all this cool stuff all the time. So tell us
Oh.
what your crafty time looks like.
Yeah, I love to craft. I'm a crafter. My mom is very crafty, so I get that from her.
Awesome.
My cross stitch journey kind of started in 2018. I found an ad on Facebook for Stitch People, and I
Huzzah.
just
Thank you,
loved,
algorithm.
yeah, I just loved how you could personalize things. I
Yeah.
love all sorts of crafts, but when you can make it your own and design the portraits how they fit your needs and gifts for other people, I got really excited. So I got the DIY Stitch People book and I taught myself with the book how to cross stitch. And that's how my journey started.
That was your first foray into just cross stitching at all.
In general, I had never cross stitched before I got
Cool.
the book. So I got the book and that was my first
Oh,
time.
yay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the cross stitch information in the book was good, good enough to
It
teach you.
was good, yeah. And it was pretty straightforward. And I like
Good.
how cross stitch, I think for somebody starting out, maybe cross stitch before embroidery because just having the X's, it's pretty
Yeah.
easy to design and do a
Mm-hmm.
basic portrait. It's not
And
kind of
conceptually, it's
falling,
easy to
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
it's just
that block
repeated X's. You're
system.
making squares. Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally
So
agree. Starting with cross stitch before embroidery. I mean, people will cross stitch and just stick to cross stitch their whole lives. Like
yeah.
it's not even something that well, there's no shame in cross stitching. No, cross stitching is just its own thing. And if you add embroidery to that, cool, but like you don't have to.
Right.
So yeah, sticking to the blocks is a little easier to plan and wrap your head around.
Yeah, that's
But
what I did in the beginning, but then I got into embroidery after.
I was going to say, but you did take it farther. So what did that look like for you? How did you get into adding embroidery into your repertoire?
Oh, I don't know where my first piece started with embroidery, but I think just following different artists on Instagram and getting some of their work, stitch alongs. There's embroidery stitch alongs on
Yeah.
Instagram, and those I think are good to start out with embroidery. Um, you have somebody teaching you exactly how to do it, so your first time is pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, and with stitch-alongs too, that often comes with sort of a built-in community element because there's other people
Yes,
doing
it
the stitch-along
does.
same time as you. So you can kind of ask around like, "Oh, I've never done this stitch before. Does anybody have any tips?" Or "I feel like I'm doing it
Right.
wrong." People are all on your same page, at the same time, which
Yeah.
is nice. So,
Yeah, and everybody's
cool.
super helpful usually, and so
Yeah,
they're there to help out if you have questions. Same as the
right.
Stitch People community. I mean,
Yeah.
don't be worried because somebody will always be there to help.
Yeah, yeah, it's always worth asking a question,
Yeah.
if you need some
Yep.
help or clarification. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you started with cross stitching, you started adding embroidery, and you do just kind of anything else that comes your way, right? Like it seems like you're always
Yeah.
trying, and especially in Japan, like there seem to be all these really cool kits that are very different. Like tell us a little bit more about like the other types of crafty kits that you found there and tackled and things you've enjoyed.
Yeah. So our base has a library, and in that library, there's some Japanese nationals here that come on base and they teach classes, craft classes. And over the years, I've got to know the ladies pretty well. And so I like to go to those when I can. There's one called Ikebana, and that's flower arrangements. And that's pretty
Oh,
fun. You go to the class and they teach you how to make these very neat Japanese arrangements.
cool.
Yeah, and then there's so much more. There's Oshi, which is one that I like to do a lot. And that's washi paper or fabric, and it's folded over and kind of glued in a way to make a portrait, whether that's a little person. I recently did a tiger, different
Hmm.
things like that. And
Cool.
you can not only go to those classes, but they have craft stores out in town where you can go buy your own kits and do them at home. And there's lots of those around. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I wonder if I'm trying to think like, is there an opportunity to do like a mixed media, like washi paper, stitch people, portrait, overlap, something? I don't know. It's bound to be something.
Probably. And that would be
Some way to
fun.
combine art forms. I'm all
Yeah.
about it. Cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really neat that they do classes that you can. What a great way
Yeah.
to get to know kind of the other people there and build that support system that you were just talking about kind of
Yeah,
lacking since you're abroad.
exactly.
I'm sure everybody feels they're lacking their family back home, and so you can kind of build a
Right.
home
You
away
can
from
meet other
home.
spouses there and get to know people. Yeah. And it
Yeah,
just gets you out of the house doing something fun.
totally.
Yep.
So what does Japanese flower arranging look like? Is there
It's
specific like techniques or principles to it?
Yes, Ikebana is a lot different than you would think an American bouquet is. We kind of have one vase and a big kind of circular flowers on top of it. It's everything's kind of bunched together. Ikebana has a base, but then it's like one focus going up, whether that's a leaf or a flower. And then a couple pieces kind of going out in the front. So it's a lot more simple. It's a lot more
Hmm.
focused on the eye on one thing, whether that one thing and not a whole big bouquet. Your focus is a
Interesting.
lot more simple.
Yeah, it sounds a
Yeah.
little more sculptural almost than it is
Yeah, more
about just like
artsy.
flowers in a vase.
Right. Yeah.
Not I mean, not to diminish it, because flower arranging is an art form that I'm actually kind of abysmal at. I will get like a bouquet from Costco, always has really great, beautiful bouquets. And I like put them in the vase and I'll clip them all down and try, and it just never seems to turn out how I see it in my head. So I really respect it, but it sounds like it's a little bit more intentional than
Right.
just like
It's a
arranging
lot.
flowers.
Yeah, it's a lot less flowers because again, you're only using a couple pieces of greenery, a couple flowers pointed out towards you. The idea is everything goes out towards you in the front. So if you turn it around, the back is kind of naked, I would say. You don't really look at the back. Ours kind of goes around the whole circle. You set it on your bar and you can look all the way around. This, it's just out towards you and the back is empty.
Oh, interesting.
So it is
it's really meant to present.
Different.
Yeah.
Right. Presenting, and it's far less flowers. Yeah.
Cool. Well, how interesting. So tell us a little bit about your Stitch People journey. What was your first portrait? What's been your most complex portrait? What's been your favorite portrait? How many portraits do you think you've done? Let's start there.
Oh, I should have counted. I have no idea. Too many to count.
Would you say are you in like the couple handfuls, or are you in like a dozens, or are you in like the hundreds?
I would say dozens, maybe 100. I don't know.
Okay.
I'd really have to count.
Okay. But like a lot. Like you're doing
a lot. This past year, my stitching kind of took off and I had a lot of people interested in my work. And so I was doing a lot of family portraits, which was nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have a shop that you're selling?
I do have an Etsy shop. It isn't my focus really, but it is there on the side because people were interested. Japan now, shipping kind of takes a couple weeks to get back and forth to the States. But I do have that available if people want it.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So
Mm-hmm.
are your sort of commissioned works a little more word of mouth? Would you say? How do you get the word out?
I don't really put the word out. I kind of focus and put out my work on Instagram. And if people are interested, my link's there for my Etsy shop.
Nice.
But I kind of do everything just because I want to do it. And I like the style or I like the certain idea. So my focus isn't really selling. It's just doing it for fun. But
perfect.
I do both.
I love that. Yeah. Yay. Yeah. So what was your very first portrait?
One of two things. I did a Halloween themed cat portrait, like a Stitch People person dressed up as a cat for Halloween. That was fun. And then around the same time, I did a military portrait for somebody that my husband knew that was getting promoted. And so I did like a portrait for them, which was nice.
That's so nice. That's such a great use case for Stitch People because it's easy to think of like a wedding anniversary or like a wedding announcement, like a family portrait, Christmas time. But I think Stitch People portraits make for really unique gifts for things like a promotion or retirement or, unique life moments like that. It's a great way to sort of commemorate what's going on.
Yeah, and once you get down the basics of the Stitch People book, there's a lot more books and patterns that you guys offer, like farm animals and different scenes. And so you can really do a lot and think of those unique situations to give to people. My grandparents used to live on a farm, so maybe I could do one for them that they would appreciate, those types of scenes or something. Yeah.
Now, you just did a big farm one, didn't you?
I did.
What was that for?
It's actually behind me. Yeah.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah. So this one I didn't do for any particular reason other than I wanted to use the Farm People
so cute.
Farm Animals book. And I had this idea, old MacDonald had a farm. And so I just did it for me. There's no purpose, but I like it. Yeah.
It's great for like a kid's room or something. Like it's, a fun little scene. Why not? Wow.
Yeah, I saw somebody
I love the composition of it.
Yeah, I saw somebody comment that it would be good for like a nursery, like you had said. Yeah. So
and you could do a whole series of cute little ones like that. I don't know, 3 Little Pigs or I don't know, something. That's really, really
Yeah.
fun. I like that
Yep.
you just get an idea and go for it. Is that
Mhm.
the, let's see, is that barn, was that barn cross-stitched? Or did you embroider it?
Yes. This part is cross-stitched. So the
Okay.
red is all cross-stitched,
And then
but
the
the
white
white
is
and
like
black are
satin.
straight.
Nice.
Yeah, satin stitch and straight
Okay.
stitches.
Very
Yep.
cool.
And
So have you
then for
done
the
much?
clouds,
Oh, yeah.
it's a mix of like French knots for like the corn and the clouds
Oh.
and the sheep.
And the sheep
Yeah.
French knots. I saw the French knots in the
Yeah.
sheep, but I'm glad you pointed it out in the
Yep.
clouds. That's really, really
Yeah.
cute. It's so great. Have you done much by way of the embroidered buildings? Embroidered or the hand-stitched
No.
house stuff?
No, I haven't, but I'd like to. And I did your Halloween themed
Yes.
house that we
And you
did
did
in the
like the little
fall.
3D people.
Yeah, I
So
put the people
cool.
on top, and that was so much fun. So I like events like that where you can join and we kind of do it together
Yeah.
because if somebody feels it might be a little overwhelming, we take it step by step and
Totally.
do a little here and there. And so that was great to kind of jump into it, but I'd like to do more of that. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
because I love I feel like you have a really great eye for layers. I don't know how else to put it. And I always say that in classes too. I'm like, I don't know how to talk about it other than layers, but just layers of texture. I feel like you have such a really great eye for it. Like in that barn where it's cross stitched, but it looks like there's some little like bricks or slats kind of, there's really some texture in there, but then you bring the texture even
Right.
more forward with the satin stitching and French knots in the clouds. Like there's just a lot of little details that can catch your eye, which is really, really fun. So
Yeah, I like
kudos.
to
I love it.
mix a little embroidery into that and kind of how you said before, kind of the mixed media aspect of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, why not bring other materials into it? I loved
Right.
the Halloween house that we did, which to be fair turned more just into like a fall cottage. But one of my favorite things was I just walked around the yard and picked like some little twigs or some little grasses to like literally incorporate. Because why not? If you want to have a little branch
Yeah.
coming in, why not use I don't know. You can get as creative as you want. So
Yeah, that was a great idea with the
yeah.
branches. That was fun to bring it in.
So what would you say is your biggest, best portrait accomplishment? What's the piece that you're most proud of?
I made a big piece for my mother-in-law. It has all my husband's side of the family, and it has 25 stitch people on it. So that has been my biggest.
Oh my gosh.
It has.
Tell us kind of how it was laid out.
So it was pretty simple in the layout. Just one long horizontal piece of Aida fabric, and I framed it and kind of just lined up everybody across it.
So it's just a really long, like
a really
wide
long
snapshot of everybody.
Yeah, yep.
Cool.
So it has my husband's parents, both sets of grandparents, all of his siblings and their families, and us. And I think the fact that my mother-in-law really likes it so much and she still hangs it up in her place and has asked me to add the new babies that come along because she appreciates it so much really makes me appreciate it as much too, because I'm glad that she's happy with it.
Yeah, and continues to love it. Like she wants you to update it. So she's clearly looking at it like, ooh, we got to add a baby. The family's growing. That's so cool. Oh, how satisfying for someone else to like it so much. That's really, really great. When was that? Was that like a Christmas gift or?
I think it was a Christmas gift one year. I don't remember what year exactly. But yeah, I gifted it for Christmas. Yeah.
Oh, how great. 25.
Yeah,
was that
it took a
pretty
while.
early on? Like, was that one of your first that you tackled, or had you sort of been in a groove having made a few already? Was that overwhelming at the time?
I had made a few already, but it was a tad overwhelming just because it was so big. So I did start and stop it a few times and do other projects in between.
That makes sense.
So it took a while. I would say start to finish like a year just because I put it down and went on to other things and came back to it.
Yeah, that's a smart way to tackle a big project, just so that you don't feel like it's taking over your life, and
Yeah.
like, I'm going to be stitching this for the next 6 months. Like, no, just one person or one little family unit at a time, and set it aside, take a break. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
That is so thoughtful and cool. You could incorporate both sets of grandparents, like you said.
Yeah.
So you kind of get everybody all in one place.
Yeah.
That's really, really
And there
cool.
was a lot of children. My husband's sisters have a lot of kids, and so there was a lot of people that added up to the 25, so it was quite a bit of people, but it was fun. I always said I wanted to make one even bigger for myself because that was my husband's side, so I'd like to do one with all of that and then my side, and so that would be even bigger.
Yeah.
But I haven't gotten the time to tackle that yet. But
yeah, talk about a
maybe
big
down
project.
the road.
Yeah,
Right.
if you do one of like, if it's your family that includes all of your in-laws, and then your family, all your husband's in-laws, like both sides of your family, it could be this just big giant thing, but fun for your kids. They could point to everybody and see where everybody is, and that's really, really fun. So how do you approach a portrait? When you get an idea, do you design a full pattern? Do you just sort of pull from patterns and books and wing it on the go? Do you hand design? Do you use a computer program? What's your process like?
I have my Mac computer. So I go on Mac Stitch on my computer, and I usually have two windows open on my computer. One is my Stitch People downloads, where I can just choose which one I want to look at, and then the other one is the Mac Stitch program, and I just go in there and design it how I want it to look, print it off, and then I'll get started stitching.
Cool. And when we talked about all your cool textures and your French knots and stuff, do you sort of have that in mind from the start, or are those embellishments that you sort of add as you go? When do
those,
the special stitches come in?
Yeah, I think those I add as I go. If I see an animal, I might see certain textures where I want to add French knots. Somebody that has curly hair, I've been getting into more of the realistic hair lately.
Awesome.
And so I like doing that. But I do that as I go. Once I print out the pattern, that's kind of comes as it comes. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So those little bursts of inspiration as the lightning bolts hit in the moment. Very, very cool. And tell us a little bit more about your logistics. Do you like using embroidery hoops? Do you use Q-snaps? Do you use a frame? What is your tools that you stitch with? And also, what does your organization look like with your floss and your supplies?
Yeah. I think I use a mix of both hoops and my Q-snap. It depends where I see the portrait going. If it's going to be finished in a hoop, I'll start it in a hoop and just leave it in the hoop and kind of tighten as I go. But if I have plans for it to be framed, then I'll do it in my Q-snap.
Nice.
I recently got a hoop stand.
Avoids the ridges.
Yes, it does. I recently got a hoop stand, and so that helps when I'm using my hoops to kind of hold it in place.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And how do you like to organize your floss? This is something that I'm actually getting really curious about. Everybody's got their own system. What's your preferred method?
Right, because I've always done it a certain way, and I've noticed a lot of people do it other ways, and it is so interesting that we all have different ways. So I have little plastic organizer bins with kind of the little squares, and I put them on the paper bobbins. So I wind the thread on the bobbins, and then I have little labels with their numbers on them, and I organize them by color.
By color. Okay. I think you and I are very similar. I like, because I had the Sip and Stitch call for the Stitch People Club in January, and Giselle, one of the other Stitch People masters, she hopped on the call, and she was, I guess she was sitting in her space kind of where she stitches, and she showed us this little drawer unit where she keeps her floss, and I think she organizes them by number. I think it was her who organizes them by number. Well, now I might be forgetting, but I thought that was so wild because the numbers don't always correlate. The numbers tend to come for DMC in the order that the colors were developed, which isn't always like Roy G. Biv, rainbow order. Because they've got like 500 colors. So, you've got your originals and then another wave of more pastels or new, just different combinations of colors. And so, but it drives me crazy to not have all of my reds together, all my greens. Like I want to see what all my options are. Because with Stitch People, it's so personalized that you don't necessarily need to target a number. Like in a kit, it might say, oh, this is DMC number this, number that, number this, number that. So for me, it's more about seeing the color than it is the label, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when I was doing my clouds, I knew I needed 3 types of blue. So I looked in my blue section and kind of figured out which ones I want to use.
Right.
Yeah.
That for me is like one of my favorite things is like getting your little bobbins out and like putting the colors together and deciding what looks good. And that's, I think that's a lot of the fun part of it.
It is.
It's like
different
when you
paints, True, yeah. It's different when you go in the store. I want to say back in the States, it was done this way too. All the DMC threads are organized by number, though. And so yesterday, I actually went to the store to get more floss colors, and I had to make my list by number, because then when I go to the store, it's easier to do it that way. So it's kind of backwards.
Totally. Yeah, it's easier to find it by number when you need to buy it. But then when you're working on the creative project, it's like, I want to see the colors. So, okay, very cool. So we're bobbin sisters, cardboard bobbins. Except I do, I just scribble my numbers on with like a marker or pen. So probably not as clean looking as your collection with the labels. I like the labels.
I used to do that. Yeah, I used to do that, but I found someone on Etsy that made these really cool colored DMC labels. Ooh. The color isn't always perfect match to the actual thread, but it's pretty close. And I feel like it looks nice. I'm an organizational person.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very satisfying.
Have it look all perfect just makes me happy.
Oh, I like that. Do you enjoy taking the skeins and twisting them around the bobbins, or do you find that to be very tedious? I feel like it's a very polarizing subject.
It is very tedious. It does take a long time.
Yeah.
But I don't mind it. I'll turn on a show and I'll just sit there and wind them. I did figure out recently an easier way to take them off. The side with the number on, if you pull that side, then it doesn't get tangled as much, because I would sit there and get them tangled. But if you do that, they don't tangle like that.
Yes. I only learned that like within the last year. It was in an event.
Same.
Maybe it was the Halloween house. Maybe it was Spring Fling or something. But I'm always like teaching, blah, blah, blah. But there's always a live chat and everybody's chatting and responding. So he's like, hey, Lizzie, pull from the number side. And I was like, what? Like, this is just to explain it for those who might not know, when you buy a skein of DMC floss, it has like 2 little wrappers to keep the skein together. One is just a short DMC logo, and on the other side is a longer one with a barcode and the number. And if you pull the, unlooped, just like end of the thing that's coming out of the number side, it will seamlessly
come out so easy and not tangle.
And if you pull from the other side, try it. If you pull from the other side, it'll just go and like bunch right up.
Yeah.
And I would wrestle the labels off and undo it. And no, just pull from the number side.
Or even take both of the pieces off and try to do it, but it still bunches up. So it's easier to keep it all together and just pull from that one side.
Totally. I did experiment with have you heard of the floss bows? Floss bow
I've
DMCs?
seen them, but I've never tried them. Yeah.
I experimented with them. I was just trying some different storage things just for some photos and a project, but that is interesting because you just they're like these long plastic things, and you just put the skein of floss, you just kind of like and like loop it into the little holder, and then those go in a holder. So I don't know. I'm curious how the longevity of it would work. And then you also don't get the kinks from the bobbins, because sometimes, as you approach the end of the floss, there's kinks in it from having been twisted around. But that, I'm curious.
Yeah, I saw somebody say, though, you know how you're using a certain color and you have some left over, putting it back on the bobbin, you can easily do that. But how would you put it back on that one?
Exactly. That's why I wonder, like the long long con, like what's the word I'm looking for here? The long-term viability.
In the long run.
In the long run. Yes, thank you. In the long run, how sustainable it would be to like, re-loop it on itself if you don't have the full length. I don't know. But yeah, I think people's organizing habits are very interesting, because I think that's a point of frustration for people sometimes, is like how to keep all of the things organized. And the more portraits you do, the more projects you do, the more colors you build up, and the more spare stuff you have. And okay, on that note, are you someone who keeps, so let's say you cut an arm's length of color and you split it into, do you use 3 threads for your cross stitches?
I used to. I actually use more now.
What's your go-to?
Because I felt some of the colors, especially dark or black, when I would use 3 threads, you could still see the fabric behind it.
Yeah.
And that would bother me a little bit.
Fair,
so,
yeah.
The lighter colors or normal colors, I'll usually use 4 threads. But for really dark colors, like black, I'll use all 6. And sometimes it's hard to get them through the holes, but then you don't have, like my lettering, I use 6, then you don't see the fabric behind. It's very solid. Very
bold.
Yeah, which I like.
Cool. So, that's really fun. I'm glad to know that. Do you, okay, I'm going to pin my second question, because my first question was going to be, if you, let's say you're using a lighter color and you've split and you've got, 4 strands, are you a person who will like keep the extra 2 because like, oh, you might use that color for something, or do you just toss the excess? And what do you do with your remnants?
Yeah, I'll keep it usually, because I've gotten to see like the pattern. So say I'm using 4 threads, I'll have 2 left over. If I need more, splitting that new one gets 2 threads for that other 2, and then 4. So it kind of uses it up eventually all perfectly. So I'll keep them. If it's really small, I throw them away, and I do have a miscellaneous little tub of some like longer, scraps. Just random pieces. And I do pull for that for smaller things like shoes, where I only need a little bit of color, and then I'll see, which brown from that random bin can I use?
I do the same thing, especially, like shoes are a really good example. Or I often will have these shorter lengths of black for when I just need to do like the 2 eyes really quick. And I know it won't take that much. Shoes, eyes, lips. I have all these little like 6-inch that I otherwise would throw away probably of another color. But I know the blacks and browns, like, I'll probably use it for something.
They'll be used eventually.
Totally. Oh, I'm so glad I asked you about your threads. So when you use all 6, do you just pull it off the bobbin, clip it, thread, and go? Or are you someone who separates all the threads so that they're not twisted? Some people really are, advocates for separating all your 6 threads, even if you're using all 6, because then they lay side by side and then there's no twist and blah, blah, blah. How do you approach that?
That is probably a good idea and probably for the best, but I don't. I just cut it and just start going.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't
good
usually
argument,
have time to untangle them all.
Nobody got time for that. I do when I'm specifically satin stitching. Like I definitely did that for the Halloween house, because you want to make sure that it's laying flat. But the cross stitches are so small that you often don't get
usually
a sense of a twist.
Tell.
At least I think.
And sometimes if it does get really tangled, I'll kind of hold up my hoop and just let it spin out, and it kind of makes it lay straighter that way as well as you're going on.
It's like it's a little dancing needle working itself out. Love that. Well, Erika, I can't believe how time is flying for us. Before it gets too far gone, I'm going to rapid fire some favorite things questions at you so we can get to know you a little better. So can you tell us, I'm finding it easy what is your favorite color, just generally?
Yes. I wouldn't say I really have a favorite color, but if I had to choose, probably yellow or chartreuse, that bright greenish yellow color. Chartreuse. That is really eye-catching.
It's a really it's almost like a poisony green, like poison apple green, which is a fun yellow green.
Like neon, really bright.
Very, very 70s. Love that. And do you have a favorite floss color that you like working with? Some people do, some people don't. That's okay.
I don't. I guess I have a certain theme of colors. I usually go to the gray section a
Mm,
lot, more than I would say orange or certain other colors,
yeah.
but nothing in particular. I kind of
Okay,
jump
okay.
around.
Fair enough. And can you tell us, do you have a favorite? This is kind of a category. Do you have a favorite music, anything? Favorite song, favorite band, favorite album, anything that you just like totally get excited about music wise?
I like a lot of different genres of music, but some of my favorites I would say is Coldplay. That's very
Love
relaxing
Coldplay.
to
Yeah.
listen to. Yeah. And then I do like Taylor Swift, and
Right
Love
on.
Story by Taylor Swift was our wedding song, so I like that
Oh, it's a
too.
love story. Oh, that's great. Okay, and how about what do you do when you stitch? Do you like it quiet? Do you like an audiobook? Do you like a TV show? What's your go-to co-stitching activity?
I usually listen to or watch podcasts because I like to watch them on YouTube actually because I like to see the people. So
Yeah.
I like to watch the Stitch People podcasts or true crime. I'm actually into that a lot. So I watch true crime podcasts, Netflix, just stitch and watch a show as I go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right on. What are some of your favorite podcast recommendations other than the Stitch People podcast? Thank you for the shout out.
Yeah, Stitch People. Another one that I watch frequently is Crime Weekly.
Oh,
And they cover old cases, new cases of true crime that's going on, ones that are solved, ones that aren't. And it's just neat listening to the story. They really go in depth. I know different cases, like the Casey Anthony case,
mm.
they did like 8 episodes, I want to
Oh,
say.
wow.
And so it's a lot of hours of time that they put into the research. So you really get a grasp for the story, which is
Interesting. Yeah,
good.
that's really,
Yeah.
really in depth. It's cool that that's all just one podcast because I feel like a lot of times, like Serial, where the whole first season was devoted to one case, but they'll
Right.
often do that per season. So it's cool that within the one podcast you're getting those deep dives.
Yeah.
Crime Weekly, you
Yep.
said? Okay, I'm
Crime
gonna have to check
Weekly.
that out.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. It's fun.
interesting. How about books? Are you much of a reader?
I like to read, but I don't reach for it a lot.
I'm
Um,
the same
my
way.
Yeah, if you put a book in front of me and told me to sit there and read, I would. And once I get into it, I would love it. But I don't reach for that as much as like listening to a podcast or
Right,
watching a
and stitching.
show.
Right, because you can
Yeah,
only do so much with your hands. Right. Yeah,
right.
yeah. That's
Yep.
I've got to remember audiobooks. I remind myself, like, Lizzie, just listen to the audiobook version. So
Yes, I
yeah.
should look into that as well.
What about shows? What are your go-to stitch shows that you watch while you're stitching?
Anything on Netflix. I really like the Netflix originals.
Hmm.
Um, I watch a whole sort of different genre. I like mystery. Um, again, the crime movies or shows. I like
Yeah.
those. I watched The Crown on Netflix
Oh,
as
nice. Yeah.
well, and I really
Man,
enjoyed
that's so
that.
well done.
So I'm hoping that
We
there's
have to
more to
watch the
that
latest
because,
season, but I
yeah,
hope so too. I've heard there's
yeah,
kind of been some controversy. People feel like it's lost its way. What is it? Imelda Staunton as the oldest version of the Queen. People she doesn't look like her and blah blah blah. But I don't know. I think they still do a pretty good job.
yeah, I enjoyed it. I did catch it later on, so I kind of binged watched the seasons. So it was weird at some point to see, okay, I'm jumping into a new season and there's totally different people in it,
Right,
but I
right.
still really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool choice
Mhm.
because you don't always see that. If a actor has to be younger or older, they will age them down or up, and it doesn't always work. So I like that they sort of
Yeah.
took a bolder choice at casting age appropriate people for each stage of the story, I guess. But yeah, it does. You do sort of
Yeah.
have to adjust your expectations.
Right.
So,
You
well,
get
cool.
used to
And
certain people.
tell me this. I like to know what's on people's bucket lists, like of things that you want to do or places you want to travel. What are some of the like big pie in the sky kinds of plans or goals or dreams that you have?
Yeah, well, speaking of the crown, I really want to go to the UK and visit England. And I've never been there before, and I've wanted to go for so long. And so that's the number one on my bucket list is just go there.
Fun.
I like to do touristy things and explore. So go there and do all the little touristy things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, when is the you could go for the coronation, King Charles. What is it?
Oh,
May
yeah.
12th or something? May 6th, somewhere in there. It's like the first or second week of May. So you could go
Yeah.
watch him drive by in the carriage on the way to
Right.
Westminster or wherever they do it. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, what a cool dream trip that'll be. I love that. Is that something that your husband would do with you? Is he kind of like a touristy history buff kind of
Yeah, I don't think
traveler?
I don't think he gets into like the royal family as much as I have, but he does like to travel and go
Sure.
different places. So he would totally
Cool.
join. Yeah.
He'd be game. Oh, that's so fun.
Yep.
Well, Erika, before we officially sign off, would you tell us, do you have any advice for newbie stitchers who are maybe just starting out cross-stitching or maybe just starting out with Stitch People? You know, now that you've been in it for, 6 years? 2018, 19, 20, 20, yeah, going on 5-6 years. You know, what words of wisdom do you have for any newbies out there?
I would say just jump right in. Don't be afraid. Don't get overwhelmed and ask questions. Join the Stitch People community if you have a question. If you're in search of an idea, that search bar, look it up. There's plenty of people that's been in their shoes there. We're right with you. And just go ahead and get started. It's a lot of fun and you'll pick up a hobby and you won't regret it. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I also just want to take a minute and thank you for being one of our Stitch People ambassadors. We've always wanted to sort of extend our branches of influence. You know, we have often natural leaders who sort of really contribute to the community or really come up with innovative ideas, and people come up with techniques or even a style of portrait or photography that people sort of look up to. And so we wanted to test the waters with Stitch People ambassadors. We just have 3 to start with. Keep it small. And Erika, you've been really cool to be willing to do that and work with us to kind of develop what works and what doesn't work. And it's been so fun to see all of the amazing projects that you do. And I swear you're the fastest stitcher out there. Like, we will draw. And maybe it's because I was thinking about, I was like, she is like a day ahead. So maybe, but at the same time, regardless of where you are in the world, a pattern drops at the time it drops. It's not like it drops at Japan midnight and then UK midnight and then US midnight. It's just like midnight Mountain Time or whatever, and yet like hours later you have it stitched. I'm always blown away by how fast you're able to get to stuff.
In my head I feel like I'm slow, but I do try to do it when it comes out and do as much as I can. I'm really passionate about this and I like to post on my Instagram and upload all my pictures, and so I try to do it as often as I can.
It's clear that your love of any crafting comes through, and your what's the word I'm looking for? It's like there's like a very clear curiosity and inspiration behind everything that you do. Like even just the point of view of your photos, the little details that you capture. It's just really, really cool to watch everything you make. So thank you so much for going out on a limb and being an ambassador for us, and being a positive contributing voice to the Stitch People community. So
I'm happy
thank you
to
so
be
much
a part
for your time
of it
tonight. Oh yes, well we're happy to have you, and appreciate your time to chat with me on the podcast. I hope you all go connect with Erika. Can you tell us your Instagram handle?
Yeah, my Instagram is Cota, ARKACOTA. Follow me on Instagram and see all the things.
Awesome. Yeah, be sure to connect, and we'll post links to her Instagram in our podcast notes and in the blog post associated with this episode. And we'll look forward to seeing you around the Stitch People community. Thank you so much, Erika.
Good. Bye.
And that is a wrap on my conversation with Erika. It was such a pleasure to chat with her. I think her talent is so extraordinary, and she really seems so fearless in the projects that she tackles, in the ideas that she comes up with, and the creative execution of pretty much everything she does, even down to the number of threads she's using. She's a great problem solver, a great creative mind, and we're just so happy to be working a little more closely with her as a Stitch People ambassador. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Stitch People podcast. We sure appreciate each and every one of you who listens and or watches along. If you have a minute and you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast or follow it wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us a rating, review if you can. It helps the algorithms. We are also open to feedback on stitchpeople.com/podcast. There's a form there. You can submit some feedback if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, or ideas. We always want to hear your feedback because it is you, the members of the great Stitch People community, who make us great and who keep us inspired and keep us going. So we always love to hear from you. Thank you so much to the Stitch People team for keeping everything running behind the scenes. And thanks to all of you in the community for your collaborative and lovely support of one another. We couldn't do it without you. Our music is by Jonathan Boyle, and our sound designer is the one and only Brandon Yost. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. Have a wonderful day and happy stitching. Hey, Stitch People, as a way to say thank you for listening to this podcast, we have made a special discount just for you. If you go to stitchpeople.com and order anything, use the code podcast10 at checkout. That's PODCAST10 at checkout to get 10% off your order as a way to say thanks. We sure appreciate you. Thanks for listening. The Stitch People podcast is a production of Beansky LLC and Stitch People. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved.